Welcome to the U.S. Manufacturing Today podcast, your hub of information about the U.S. manufacturing and distribution industry. Brought to you by Variable, the on-demand labor solution revitalizing and optimizing your operation, enabling just-in-time response to demand, more efficient production, and lower cost per unit. And now your host and head of reindustrialization at Variable, Matt Horine.
Welcome back to U.S. Manufacturing Today, the podcast powered by Variable, where we talk with the leaders, innovators, and changemakers shaping the future of American industry, along with providing regular updates on the state of the industry, the changing landscape, policies, and more. Today, we're diving into one of the most important conversations happening in the supply chain, how machine shops can grow with purpose without burning out their people or chasing the wrong work. I'm joined by Tony Kelbert and Dan Echternkamp, the founders of Aerospace Growth Strategies, a firm that helps machine shop owners take a methodical, sustainable approach to growth. Rather than chasing random RFQs or forcing sales scripts, Tony and Dan help shops get clear on the right kind of work, the kind that fits their capabilities, boosts the team morale, and strengthens the bottom line. We'll talk about what growth really looks like in aerospace manufacturing today and more, and why purpose-driven strategies are outperforming the old school hustle. Tony and Dan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
First things first, I would love to hear about your origin story and your background in the manufacturing space.
Yeah, I'll go first. I started out kind of conventional corporate engineer route. 15 years I spent in designing, started out in military vehicles and then moved into private jet interiors at Gulfstream Aerospace. That wasn't a great fit for me. There's a lot of red tape involved on the engineering side of the aerospace industry. So I started getting really opportunistic and started looking around for where my specific skills might be useful and came across FormLogic. Turned that initial interview into a consultancy and then became one of the early members of that team as they started feeling out where everything fit in the aerospace industry, where machining fit, and who their target customer was, their ideal customer. And that's where I ran into Dan. I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, I've been in the machining industry for a little better part of 15 years, primarily sales roles. But as Tony mentioned at FormLogic, my most recent role, I was heavily involved with sales and operations. So I got to get a full picture of the manufacturing process, not just from the machine floor, but from RFQ from a customer all the way through to shipping and invoicing and actually collecting on those invoices as well. Not just, here's an invoice. That's also another issue to be told and discussed maybe on a later date. So yeah, my experience has been across roughly 500 to 1,000 machine shops throughout the US, some in Europe. So I've definitely traveled quite a bit and visited a lot of different shops. And really our mission is at AeroGrowth is to really give a full network approach for all of the manufacturers that we're working with, allow them to communicate. A lot of times shop owners that are just a little bit stuck and don't know what to do. And if Tony and I don't have the answer or a possible answer, we love to be able to connect our shop owners or leaders to discuss kind of those problems and work through them together. But we also give like outside the four walls. What I'll mention it probably multiple times throughout this podcast. What you don't know, you don't know. And a lot of times shop owners, they know what's in there, how to run their operations, but they don't know how to get to that next level, or they don't know how to solve this one problem. And it's a recurring problem. So what Tony and I can provide or do provide very often is that outside perspective, something that we've seen work in the past and enable them to grow through that.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that a little bit, I think working with these shop owners, there are, estimates vary, but between 17,000 and 30,000 machine shops in the United States. And a lot of these are 2 to 15 person machine shops where the owner is doing a little bit of everything. So one day they're out running the machines, they're working on processes, they're hiring, they're managing workflow, all of that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, and then we got to fill the pipeline. It's time to go do some sales. And so that's where Dan and I can come in and support. Look, you don't have to beat everybody in the industry. You just need that little bit of edge to get your visibility out there with the right people. And so through the network approach, just a good old boys network on steroids is what Dan and I bring to the machine shop industry. And then with that additional coaching support of, okay, great, you've met this person. How do we maximize that relationship?
Now, you hit on something really important there because the profile stands out to me. We do a lot of manufacturing. I've done a lot of manufacturing work. Variable works almost exclusively with manufacturers and distributors. And you see the profile of that machine shop type owner, really good at what they do, probably better than anywhere else in the world. And it's a distributed network of thousands of them. But when it comes time to commercial and really advocating for themselves and going after the right kind of work, it's something that it's super helpful to them on that side of it because they get out of the operations world and into that network, which identifies and leads into my next question. What was the biggest gap that you saw in the market that wasn't really being addressed for those machine shop owners, and how that kind of helped form your company?
The biggest problem that I've ran into is that most shops are worried about spindle hours. If they see a machine sitting, they think that they're losing money. And what I've come to find out through both experiences and actual hands-on experiences is that that's actually not true. Oftentimes, spindles running is just burning your team out. It's stressing everyone out. It's stretching everybody thin. It's not leaving the capacity for those opportunities that do come in that have a much larger potential.
But that makes a lot of sense just because you think of equipment downtime and it's all about on the operations side, is it lost revenue or is it just productivity? And those are the types of questions that we see from ops folks, but for business planners and people who are going after revenue, that's their first inclination, but it's the right kind of work, I think is probably the theme here. Many shops chase RFQs as a default growth strategy. That's one of the things that we've spoken about before. Why is that a little bit of a trap in your point of view?
Honestly, quoting parts is busy work. If you're not seeing the right parts, or you're not quoting the right parts, or you're even quoting parts that don't have long-term value for what you're trying to provide, it's just busy work. You might get something in, but it's stretching you thin. And as we know, as Tony mentioned earlier, shop owners are thin. There's just not a lot of time in the day. You talk to just about every one of them and they're working 12, 18-hour days, 6 to 7 days a week. And that wasted time quoting just to keep a machine running versus quoting strategically and the right type of stuff that's going to help you grow and relieve some of that time, that's where you should be spending the time. So it's a lot better just to have a quick little default. What Tony and I do, we have a part scorecard. So it's about 15 different attributes. You literally select 1 through 5 based on whatever that attribute is, and it gives you a score. Is it a good fit or is it a bad fit? It takes about 15 seconds to fill out. And now you know, okay, nope, not going to do this one because it's not a good fit. And you can easily tell your customer, no, that's not a good fit.
So many manufacturers step into that, and you think about quotes coming in back in the day over the fax machine. Is it like a real quote? Is it something that we actually want to do? And people just do it, and it's wasted time on a lot of people's parts. Shifting a little bit, don't know if I saw this on LinkedIn in a post or something that we discussed before, but it has a big impact on the people, the culture, the morale of a shop, right? In terms of what type of work they're changing. And you emphasize that the right type of work boosts morale for a team. What are some of the early signs that a shop is taking on the wrong type of work to either one of you?
So early signs, you got people leaving, you got unhappy people leaving early. Believe it or not, they're just in a hurry to get out of the shop. That's a big sign right there. But during our onboarding process, we asked to speak to 5 to 10, depending on the company size, of course, but let's just say 5 to 10 for the simplicity of their key team members. And we do it just like a friendly little conversation, as if it's 2 guys going out to have a beer together and just socializing. And we really pick their brain on what it is that they feel their skill sets are, where they're best. Could be super complex 5-axis geometries. It could be mill turn, it could be Swiss, doesn't really matter. Just what is your what is your personal core competency, and where do you think that your skills are best in place? And maybe it's not programming, maybe it's machining or deburring or inspection or whatever the case may be, but talking to different members of the team to really identify their skill sets. From there, we lead into more about what they like to do. Do you like working on space parts? Do you like working on medical devices? Do you like working in the semiconductor industry? What metals do you like? Do you like repeat setups, or do you like to just constantly be changing over and banging your head against the wall trying to get these parts set up and out as quickly as possible? Some people like that frenetic lifestyle. So we really just try to understand what the people like to do and what they believe they're good at. And from there, we can really identify a core part profile. But I think more importantly is a customer profile. We look often at their current customer base. They might have 25 customers in their current customer base, and 20 of them could just be upsetting their employees. And how do you replace those customers? How do you fire those customers? And there's definitely strategies around accomplishing that while not affecting your overall revenue and your margin goals.
I think what Dan touched on is really important too, because not every machine shop is the same. Like each one has its own culture. Each one has its own group of people that like specific things. So you might have a prototype shop where everybody in there is jack of all trades and they love doing multiple setups and that's what they thoroughly enjoy. And then you might have another shop where somebody is just, look, I want to come in, I want to know what I'm getting into, and I want to have a backlog that's 2 weeks deep where I know what I'm going to be doing every day when I get to work. That really determines where you steer your sales efforts as well. You don't want to give the wrong work to the wrong shop because that doesn't serve anybody involved in the transaction.
Absolutely. There's one key thing I picked up in there about firing the wrong customer. And there's a lot of times in manufacturing where, that steady work, how do you backfill that? Or it's just gotten contentious for any number of reasons. And you could come up with a million reasons why, but it really speaks to what you all are doing and helping customers define that. What does the right customer look like? How do we manage our day? That's something that's baseline on a lot of people and then in the operations space, just because they've always done it that way, or this is a customer we've had for a long time. Things do change, and we're in a very rapidly changing environment with supply chain and tariff impact and where people are looking to source from. It's one of the biggest things that stood out in the reshoring movement is saying, I need somebody on the American side to pick up the phone, but that's a big part of it. So baseline, what it has to do with is the morale of the shop. Shifting a little bit, and I know this is something that you both are very passionate about, but wanted to talk about building the inbound sales pipeline. Somewhat of a mythical thing for a lot of folks. They're constantly on the outbound side. They're hunters, they're working that. But how do you get people to come to you? And I'm sure it has a lot to do with reputation and just the right network. But how do most machine shops market themselves today? Is it posting lists and saying, send us your parts and we'll quote? Does that approach actually work?
What I found is that machine shops are really good at marketing to other machine shops. They know what's important to other machine shops because they're there on the floor. They're living that. That's the world that they're inside of. Dan says, what we can bring is an outside of your four walls perspective. And what that does, we help machine shop owners understand what's important to their customers. And then I can help them develop the messaging that appeals to that specific group of customers. I've got a lot of experience on this. I started out with about 300 followers on LinkedIn 3 years ago, and it's just been growing steadily at 1% to 2% a week. And I'm at 10,000 plus now, and it continues to ramp because after a while, you feel out, okay, what sort of messaging are people going to respond to? And so if you have that combination of keen insight into what customers care about and the ability to distribute in a very organic way that sounds like you as a person, what you end up with is not these transactional one-off, hey, come do business with us because we have these capabilities. You end up with inbound that's, hey, I saw you posted about that. That was really interesting. Tell me more about that. I think we might have an application for you. And what you build is partnerships over the longer term. And that's why Dan and I partnered originally, is because he takes those partnerships then to the next level and turns them into long-term agreements that are going to feed everybody in your shop for the next many months.
One of the things that stood out with your group, just because it can be loosely defined as something like here's what we do to here's why you should care. And I think I saw that in your material. A lot of people don't do that. It's people do care, but at the end of the day, they don't care. They're making a buying decision, and they're doing that based on a lot of different factors, which I think you made the point of relationship or a long-term relationship and knowing that something is good, the quality is coming. They're not worried about that. They could be worried about other things like lead times or things that are outside of the control, but that's really what it ultimately boils down to. How can shops start generating inbound leads instead of chasing every RFQ? How do you shift that mindset when somebody's run their business a certain way for so long and it seems to work and they're busy? And that's a big thing. We're all busy. We all have a ton of emails. We all have a ton of text messages and whatever else, LinkedIn. How do you shift that to say, hey, maybe calm the noise down and go after the stuff that you're good at?
Your vibe attracts your tribe. So if you put out who you are in public, you will attract people that resonate with that. And that's true in a business sense as well. So here are my values. Here are our capabilities. Here's what I see happening in the industry. That level of insight attracts people to you. And then you can talk to them not as prospects, not as future customers, but just as humans. On a human level, here's another person that I can really have a relationship with. And then that just inherently turns into good business over time.
Yes, I think that's a big component of it. And one of the other things that was lingering and thinking in the background because of my work with some machine shops and just manufacturers in general, because this is marketing in a certain sense, that's a big word for a lot of manufacturing and operations folks. They don't maybe know what it means full spectrum. They don't want to spend a lot of money on it, but how much of their time and effort and budget should go to the marketing side of this? If they're not doing it now, or if they are, how does it get reformatted? Those seems like a big, I would assume, big ask from some of your partners.
So there's like price of admission. You have to have some sort of marketing collateral. You know, it's good to pay a photographer to come out and take pictures of your shop, all of that stuff. That's the baseline. But then realistically, after that, the distribution can be free. It can be really cheap. All of these social media platforms are essentially free. Once you understand what it takes to build a network, once you understand what it takes to put together messaging, Our typical strategy is I'll sit down, like Dan said, two guys having a beer. We'll just chat about stuff. And from that, I'll be able to generate usually 6 to 8 weeks worth of weekly LinkedIn posts that'll get your name out there, get people to engage, and we can start mapping out your network and understand, okay, who in your network is engaged, and then where can we steer that? A network has a surface area, right? There's a certain bubble that you operate within. Okay, if we shift our messaging, how can we expand that bubble? And what group of people can we reach next? And so it's very organic. It grows. I say organic, but it like literally looks like an amoeba if you visualize it, right? Like it just keeps expanding. And if you steer it correctly, it leads you to really profitable, increase the value of your network significantly.
Yeah, it's a really good analogy because it is something that is just shifting, and it's 100% shifting from that maybe process driven about your current structure into a more methodical strategy is how I would see that. For shops that don't have a dedicated commercial or sales function, how do they start doing that? Because I think we talked about it at the top of the show. Maybe this is somebody who likes doing what they're doing, and that's stepping outside the comfort zone a little bit. How do they make that a repeatable and high quality business development organization?
Yeah, that's ultimately what we're here for, right? We are here to bounce ideas off of, have suggestions on how to approach that with the least friction possible. A lot of the shop owners are machinists, and they're used to being in front of their machines and doing their work that way. And it's a little bit uncomfortable for them to go out and do a sales type process. And so that's what Tony and I do. That's where we come in and we help coach through that process. I like to say that we're a mix between consulting and manufacturer's rep. We're not either. Truthfully, we're coaches. And what we do is work hand in hand with you to develop those skills, to work on those processes, to become more comfortable. But at the end of the day, not everybody's made out to be sales, and we can be there to help guide and get you there. And if it's not successful, then that we can help train somebody else on your team that is looking to do something like that and expand. And we kind of work in that regard as well. So it's really about teaching the processes and the experiences that we've gone through in the past and how to apply those across the board. That's part of the reason why I started AeroGrowth, was because I feel like I've built a pretty strong skill set. And there's just not enough at one shop, not enough capacity at one shop to fill all of the demand that's out there. And if we can share our experiences, share our knowledge with others across the industry, like Tony mentioned, 17 to 30,000 machine shops across the US, if we can share that knowledge and help them grow the way that we've learned to grow, it can be a very successful reshoring of manufacturing and all of that stuff, because it's really about getting your message out there so people know who you are and what you do, and focusing in on those key features and factors.
Yeah, you hit on something very important there, because I think there's a common misconception or just conception, it may be a reality, that the doing sales, air quoting that, people, it's a natural thing, but they put it on this, if I like doing what I'm doing, how do I become the sales guy? You're already doing it. You're the master at your craft, and you're somebody who knows the process end to end, which takes it away so much from somebody. I really like what you put, the blend between consultant and a manufacturer's rep. We've all dealt with consultants. We've all dealt with manufacturer's reps. There's the line card. There's something that's a little bit more operational. But if you could get the best of both worlds, it really makes a difference for a lot of manufacturing space. And you touched on something, talking broader picture, looking at the future of the aerospace supply chain, because that's, I think, a lot of both of your background and something that is really thematic with machine shops, because there's thousands of them that service some of the bigger names that we maybe know or are more familiar with. What are the big trends you're seeing in aerospace and defense manufacturing right now?
The sheer volume is just staggering. This is something that's actually relatively new to me. So I came from the engineering side. I was like, okay, I design it and then I punt it to our procurement team, and then we get parts in, great. And so as I came on board here and just getting my head above water and like tying into the OEM network, you just realize the sheer volume of things that are being sourced in the United States. There are defense sensitive things that you're just not going to offshore those. Like you have to get them made domestically. And there are quality critical things where like you're not going to take a risk with a supplier that you can't go to their shop and check in and do an audit. And so that's what has been surprising to me about this industry, is just the sheer volume of demand that there is for things to be built in the United States, and then the very fragmented nature of the supply base that provides those things to the people who need them.
I think it's important also to just tack on the birth of the new companies, right? You've got so many new technology companies that are up and coming in the space. And we've heard the names Anduril, Shield AI, Saronic, Castillon, these guys that are new to the space that are just completely changing the way processes are made. I was talking to a contact of mine at a legacy defense company, and we're competing against these smaller companies that don't have the regulations that we have. They don't have all of the requirements and the standards that we have. And the growth rate that they are able to provide to do because of that is just staggering. So I think that the legacy companies are having to now almost play catch up to the new technology companies in a way that they have to redefine the way that they approach things. So that's a really cool insight that we've seen a lot from the legacy guys. But also the new guys are so scatterbrained. They're just trying to move so fast. They have no idea what their supply chain looks like. They're just throwing everything. The phrase that Tony and I use all the time, the spray and pray method, that's what these guys are doing with their suppliers. They're just spraying out all of these RFQs and praying that somebody's going to take it and be successful, right? So there's a very little strategy from the new technology, and there's adaptive strategy from the legacy companies.
That's a good point. And that supply chain evolution is interesting too, because a lot of the legacy suppliers are used to owning the supplier OEM relationship. Look, you're going to read these 15,000 volumes of our documents, and you're getting married to this supplier. And now Dan said with some of these more nimble suppliers, is look, shoot, make us some parts. We'll come out, audit, make sure things are going good, but let's go. And that's a really cool energy to see in this space.
Definitely a big change in mentality, at least what we've seen over the past 6 to 12 months of people being able to get in the space. And it makes a little bit more of the headlines. Companies like Anduril, they're obviously out there and great follows on any socials just because they're aspirational, and it's an exciting time to be in defense and in American manufacturing. We've said on this show a number of times that reindustrialization starts on the shop floor. It's not something that's really specific to the big defense companies or the defense sector, because there's so many tens of thousands of machine shops that supply those companies and can cross-load with other applications. So maybe more industrial, maybe guys building factories. It's for what? Not sure yet, but we're trying to get that footprint back. I think the big question, and you guys see this every day, is how should smaller machine shops position themselves as the supply chain rebalances and reshoring accelerates? Because there were parts that maybe weren't made domestically that could go into some of the larger, not necessarily defense sector. If you think of Boeing or if you think of some of the bigger name brands, how do they get in front of this and really thrive over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think that there's several ways. One, and it's what Tony and I preach all the time, it's really narrowing in on what you're good at. It's literally that simple. If you're great at something, stick to it. Keep fighting that fight. The work will come. You will find what you need, where you need to go. Because at the end of the day, if you're great at something, your costs are lower. Your margins are higher. You know how to do that in and out. It's not a big deal. It's not trying to teach new people new tricks. It's literally just focusing in on what you're truly good at. And it could be one or two things. It could be two different materials, something of that nature. But I also think that not everybody is suited for automation. A lot of people think automation is machine tending. That's automation in the machining world, right? Oh, I've got a robot that loads a machine and then takes it back out, and then I can just do this 24/7. That's great because now you can run unattended, but that's not the only automation that's out there. There's so many other ways to automate your processes. So looking into different ideas, I don't like the word smart technology personally. I think it's just too vague and there's just too much to it. So just looking at all the technologies and being open-minded to what's possible to simplify your processes. It could be simple as coaching like Tony and I provide. It still helps you automate your process because what you're doing is, it's not really automated. It's simplifying your process, right? It's more, hey, we're having this issue. Instead of you having to think for 30 minutes how to type an email about a late order, come to us. We're already talking to these guys. We know how to communicate issues and things of that nature and show full transparency without giving up too much. And really, I think that's the best way.
There's an interesting thing to tack on to that, and it's a specific reason that Aerospace Growth Strategies is an effective partner for our manufacturers. It's because we have an ear into the OEM side of things too. Like Dan said, okay, what's the best way to scale? It's to be really good at what you're good at. Okay, how do I find people who care? You have an intermediate partner that's dealing with a bunch of folks that are doing the spray and pray method and would absolutely love to find somebody that's really good at Inconel, 3-inch diameter, high precision manifolds. And then all of a sudden it comes to us. We understand that need. And we're like, oh yeah, absolutely. You should work with XYZ supplier. That's their bread and butter. So those are the types of relationships that we hope to facilitate, not by standing in the middle, but by lifting up the people that we're working with to the point where we can make those connections comfortably and both sides benefit mutually.
Such a big, important part to play because I think in the past it has been that, right? It's almost like some type of middleman structure, and not to ding any line of work or anything along with those things, but you get line cards, you get RFQs, you get these things, and are they serious? Is this a real quote? Are they going to proceed with it? That's intent is a lot of it, but It resolves a lot of uncertainty out there in the market for people who are just trying to grow their business, is what I can imagine.
To be honest with you, Matt, when Dan and I started talking about this, he's, yep, I want this to be a coaching offering. I don't want this to be a commission play. And I thought he was bananas because I was looking at some of these volumes. I'm like, are you kidding me? Why are we doing it this way? But it makes sense, right? Because you build trust on both sides of the coin and you're providing value to the people that are working with you. They're not just looking to you to be like, oh, okay, I got an empty machine. Let's go. Let's fill this up. No. That's not what we're here for. We're here to build a small shop's ability to attract high quality work from high quality OEMs and facilitating those introductions when it's appropriate.
Yeah, I think it's important to piggyback off that. After the introduction, it's not that we just disappear. And I think the important factor is we're also not involved heavily. We're involved as you want us to be involved. It's an introduction. Two people meet, kick me out of that email chain, please. I don't want to be a part of the direct messaging. What I do want to be a part of is when something good happens, when something bad happens. Those two areas, if I get those two things, that type of feedback, we can then roll that into good communication. How do we solve this? How do we tell them, oh, this is great? I had a client of ours reach out the other day. He's, hey man, I just lost the RFQ to this big production. I said, how do you feel? And he's, I'm a little bit bummed, but we learned a lot through the process because they're a newer shop. And I said, here's the best way to go about this. And it's something that I've used my entire career. And I'll share it here on this, even though nobody's paying for this, right? So what I like to do is go out. Whatever my quoted lead time was for the first delivery, say it was 6 weeks. Send an email to that buyer in 6 weeks from when you found out that you didn't get that and say, hey, just checking up on this part. I wanted to see how delivery was going because today would have been the day that we would have delivered. Simple, clean, easy. That buyer is going to answer you two ways. He's either going to say, oh, it's going great. We've already gotten first shipments, or, oh, the supplier's falling on his head. Can you please help me? Those are the two solutions or two answers that you're going to get. And if you get the second one, guess what? You're going to get that RFQ and you're going to say, yes, I can help you. And now you're in the role for future work. Just very simple tactics such as that.
No, that's a really great tactic because I think it sticks to the maxim that the deal is never quite dead, right? It's something that so many people get dejected from losing an RFQ and thinking that they've lost out on work. But the network effect of that is pretty incredible. If I'm a machine shop owner and something you've said today really caught my attention, what's the best way to get in touch with you? And how does it look like when people just get started with you? Just want to give them that process as well.
The best way is to either reach out to Tony or I. Our emails are very easy, Dan or Tony. So Dan at aerogrowthllc.com. You can also reach us on LinkedIn, search our names. I'm sure that will be available here. Yeah, those are the two easiest ways. Our website is under construction still. We actually haven't even started it. We've been too busy helping our customers develop, so we haven't developed our own. But basically what that looks is we schedule an intro call, usually 30 to 60 minutes. We get to know you and your facility and where you're looking to go. And we obviously share our process and what we do. And then from there, we we email out a questionnaire. We ask that you fill that out. And what that does is provide a personalized scope of work based off of what we believe we can do for your company. And then it's decision time, right? We set up we do a scope review call and we agree on what we think that scope should look like, what level of engagement you'd like to pursue, and we start. We do have a bit of a backlog right now. We're not taking on every single client that we talk to or that wants to join. We are steadily taking them on so that we can make sure that we're onboarding properly. I know, as I told Tony, we had a ton of inbound recently, but the number one goal is not to just keep scaling and scaling. The number one goal is to never have a customer say a bad word about us. And if we have a client that comes out and says one bad thing, that ruins our entire reputation and exactly what we don't want. We hope that we continue to get podcasts that say our name out there, like how great we are and what we do, but that's our mission and how to get a hold of us.
Oh, that's great. Tony and Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and thanks for joining us. And your approach really reframes what growth means for aerospace manufacturers and the machine shop.
Great to be here.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
To stay ahead of the curve and to help plan your strategy, please check out our website at variableops.com and under the resources section titled Trump 2.0, where you can see the framework around upcoming policies from the administration and how they will impact you. If you're on socials, give us a follow on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, or Truth Social. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please feel free to follow the show on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube and leave us a rating. And don't forget to subscribe. Thank you again for joining us and learning more about how you can make your way.